video of Enes Kanter saying that he is declaring himself as a WNBA prospect. So he posted this on his social media. He said, if simply declaring who you are is all that's required, then I meet every single requirement necessary to compete in the WNBA. And he basically says, based on the current guidelines, I can and am officially declaring my eligibility for the upcoming WNBA draft in April 2027. Like, I don't know whether to laugh. I don't know whether to cry, because like I've said in other videos, this league is the anything but basketball league. The storylines around this league are never about basketball. And I didn't realize what I was signing up for by covering this league to the extent that I have been covering it for the past 3 years. Like, I actually like sports. I don't want to talk about politics. I don't want to talk about drama and negativity. And it's literally, that's the thing that's in your face.
I'm gonna make this very simple for you, Dan. Men should not play sports against women. I'm not gonna get into all the bullshit that's going on out here in the world today. If anybody thinks that, I think they're stupid. I'm not, like I say, I support the gay community 100%. I support the transgender community 100%. But I do not, under any circumstances, under zero, think that men should play sports against women. And if anybody have a problem with that, they're going to have to get over it, because I'm not going to.
Charles Barkley just looked straight into the camera and basically warned the WNBA that they could be heading for a serious legal battle. And the crazy part? He might actually have a point. What started as a joke video from a retired NBA center has somehow turned into one of the messiest situations the league has dealt with in a long time. Now there are lawyers getting involved, sponsors starting to pay attention, social media turning into complete chaos, and Barkley sitting on national television calling the whole thing outrageous. So how did a simple mock draft declaration turn into a potential crisis for a league that was already dealing with plenty of criticism? Let's break down exactly what happened, why it's getting so much attention, and what could happen next.
Oh my gosh, it's happening. A former NBA star has now declared himself a prospect for the WNBA. This is Enes Kanter Freedom. He is 6'10", 250 pounds. He now says that he has reviewed all of the eligibility requirements and criteria for the WNBA and has decided to declare himself eligible for the 2027 WNBA Draft.
Yo, shit just got real, y'all. If this is true, Enes Kanter Freedom said, you know what? It's time for the WNBA to put up or shut up. They want to talk about, they believe inclusivity and exclusion is never the answer, and there's not even a number big enough of people other than women, other than biological women who are playing in women's sports for it to matter, for all this fuss and all this, you know, all these people to be looking at it like a problem. Shit just got real.
Enes Kanter Freedom, the former NBA center known for his outspoken political views, posted a video declaring himself eligible for the 2027 WNBA draft. And what made it so interesting was how seriously he delivered it. He wasn't yelling, joking around, or trying to turn it into some over-the-top comedy bit. He calmly read a statement straight to the camera in a tone that sounded more like an official press release than someone making a viral video. And that's exactly what made the whole thing so bizarre. It almost felt like he wanted people to take the declaration seriously, even though the entire situation was clearly designed to get a reaction.
Consideration and reviewing the current eligibility guidelines, I am officially declaring myself a WNBA prospect. If simply declaring who you are is all that's required, then I meet every single requirement necessary to compete in the WNBA. My team and I have carefully examined the WNBA's eligibility criteria and governing framework surrounding self-identification and inclusion. Based on the current guidelines, I can and am officially declaring my eligibility for the upcoming WNBA draft in May 2020.
What made Kanter's move so difficult to simply dismiss as a joke was the fact that he never actually said he was mocking anyone. In the video, he went out of his way to say that he wasn't there to make fun of or disrespect anyone. Instead, he framed the whole thing as a question of fairness and whether the same rules should apply equally to everyone. And that's a very different approach from some random troll account posting something just to get laughs. That's also why so many people had trouble treating this as nothing more than a joke. Kanter pointed to the WNBA's own rules and argued that the league's collective bargaining agreement says only women are eligible, but doesn't clearly explain what that means or how gender identity factors into eligibility. His basic argument was pretty simple: if there's a rule, then the rule should be applied consistently. In other words, he was essentially saying, if the door is open, I'm going to walk through it, and I'm going to do it politely.
I'm a woman. I identify as sometimes identifying as a woman for purposes of basketball, professional basketball. So I'll be declaring for the WNBA draft in 2027.
Only thing I want to say is what happened to the people that made content, the people that wore t-shirts that wanted men to play with women? Where did they go? I've been looking for them. People, hey, where's Cheryl Reeve at with some t-shirts? Where them content creators at, man? This would be such a good idea if Clark had him as a teammate. Where all y'all go now? Y'all been real quiet around here, bro. Real quiet. The hell is going on?
Then things got even messier. Just hours after Kanter's video went viral, former Houston Rockets first-round pick Royce White went on Fox News and did essentially the same thing, only this time, he was louder and far less interested in playing it subtle. White sat there completely straight-faced and announced that he was declaring for the 2027 WNBA Draft as well. The bizarre part was watching the anchor across from him trying to figure out whether this was supposed to be satire, a political statement, or an actual attempt to challenge the league's eligibility rules. And that's what made the whole situation so strange. What started with one former NBA player suddenly turned into two former players making essentially the same argument, forcing people to ask a very uncomfortable question: was this just a publicity stunt, or were they actually testing how the WNBA would respond?
This could get interesting. Royce White, who is a former NBA player and a Republican candidate for U.S. Senate, has decided to declare for the WNBA draft as a transgender individual. And he is testing to see exactly what the left is going to do. Now, I'm sure that many on the left are already going to cry foul over this because he looks, walks, and talks like a man. And I think that this is hopefully going to educate quite a few of them on what we have all been saying regarding this situation. Because this guy is a former NBA player, and it is realistically a situation where if they do accept him, it is going to heavily tilt the scales in favor of whatever team he ends up on. Now, if they end up rejecting him entirely, the left will have proved our point. So this is an interesting trap that the WNBA has been put in, as well as the left in the United States.
Two former NBA players, both standing over 6 feet 8 inches, both former first-round picks, and now both claiming they could enter a women's league within the exact same 24-hour period. That's when this whole situation started looking a lot bigger than a random joke. Kanter has even said in follow-up interviews that if the league somehow allowed this to go all the way, he'd actually be willing to show up and play. He's even joked that he's already working on his crossover. At that point, it was getting harder to call this a one-off prank. With two former NBA players making essentially the same move within hours of each other, the internet immediately started treating it like a coordinated statement, and the reaction was absolutely explosive.
Said after another NBA player identifies as a woman and is now declaring for the WNBA draft.
I'm transgender. I identify as sometimes identifying as a woman, declaring for the WNBA draft.
So yes, this is very true. We had Enes Freedom make the announcement yesterday, and we now have another former NBA player, Royce White, doing the same thing for the 2027 WNBA draft. Now, like I mentioned, a lot of people are very upset about this, so Royce White responded to this saying, "I haven't even been publicly trans for 72 hours and I'm already getting so much hate. I just want to hoop with my girls in my feminine era. Why can't y'all be happy for me?" Now, because of this, the WNBA announced that they are meeting to review what a woman is.
The reaction was immediate, and it was everywhere. Every app, every group chat, every corner of social media seemed to be talking about it. Within a single news cycle, the story had even spilled into mainstream media, and the clips were pulling massive numbers across multiple platforms. But the comment sections quickly turned into a full-blown war zone. And people weren't just arguing about basketball anymore. They were arguing about fairness, identity, free speech, and exactly where satire crosses the line. Some people thought it was the funniest thing they'd seen all year. They argued that Kanter and White had found the perfect way to expose a policy they believed the league hadn't clearly defined. Others saw it completely differently. To them, two grown men claiming they wanted to enter a women's league, even while insisting they were being respectful, was still mocking women's sports and crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed for the sake of a joke. Then the pressure started reaching the business side. Sponsors were already paying close attention to the WNBA's ongoing controversy surrounding its transgender eligibility policies, and now reporters were calling them directly, asking whether they still stood behind the league through yet another public relations storm. Some smaller regional sponsors reportedly paused promotional campaigns while they waited to see how the situation developed, and at least one national brand quietly pulled a scheduled ad rotation for the week. And according to people familiar with the league's marketing operation, that's when the situation started becoming a lot more serious than anyone expected.
under any circumstances, zero, think that men should play sports against women. And if anybody have a problem with that, they're going to have to get over it, because I'm not going to change. I just think it's wrong, period. If people disagree with me, I'm good with that. Hey, we disagree. Yeah. I'm not mad at you. I don't hate you. I'm not going to call you names, because that's just silly and stupid. But I'm never going to think it's all right for men to play sports against women. And I don't even think that's controversial. That's the thing that's funny. Like some of this stuff make, like when you see these debates on television, I'm like, yeah, men shouldn't play sports against women. I'm done. I don't want to hear you try to explain it to me. No, I don't want to hear it. I'm not going to argue with you.
Of these NBA players.
Oh, I think it's awesome. You know, I think if they want to be inclusive of the WNBA, so these coaches that have been coming out speaking against Sophie have been saying they're the most inclusive league there is. We're about to find out, right? I think they should let these guys go to the draft and whatever they identify as, let them go into the draft and see what happens.
Yeah, I think so. You know, you are really a legend in football. You're a Hall of Famer. You played in the league for more than a decade. And I was actually surprised when I saw you standing up for Sophie Cunningham, because we don't hear this often. What made you stand up for Sophie?
I just think it's a common sense issue. You know, it's an 80-20 issue. It goes pretty much our way. I just don't understand why it's even a discussion. There should not be men and women's sports. It's just common sense, right? I mean, biologically we're different. I think that's pretty well noted. People know that for the most part. I guess they have to explain to them sometimes, but it's not even an issue. Men should not be playing versus women. It shouldn't be in the locker rooms, shouldn't be anywhere around them.
That's when Charles Barkley finally weighed in, and he absolutely did not hold back. While discussing the situation on Inside the NBA, Barkley called the whole thing completely outrageous. But here's the part that really caught people's attention. He wasn't only criticizing Kanter and White for making the videos. He was also criticizing the WNBA for putting itself in a position where two former NBA players with legitimate resumes could make what sounded like a serious argument about entering a women's league in the first place. Barkley's basic point was, y'all did this to yourselves. His argument was that if a league spends months refusing to clearly explain who is actually eligible to play, it shouldn't be shocked when people take that ambiguity and push it to its limits. And according to Barkley, this entire situation could have been avoided with one clear, written policy months ago. Instead, the lack of clarity created an opening, and now everyone is arguing about it.
Come out and say it. I'm transgender, and I'd like to pursue a career in the WNBA, in all women's sports. I mean, pick one. But the WNBA is probably most suitable. I just, for me, personally, I hear a lot of people talk about us, transgenders, as an sort of enigma. But nobody's really willing to just say, no, we're not doing it. We're done. Fuck off. And, why wouldn't I continue to pursue a WNBA career until the day when people finally put some guardrails back around common sense, logic, reason, the truth?
Barkley wasn't the only big name from the sports world to jump into the conversation. Shaquille O'Neal addressed the controversy on his podcast the very next day, saying he found the whole situation both funny and kind of sad. His point was that Kanter and White had essentially forced the country to have a conversation that many reporters have been carefully avoiding for months. Former NFL linebacker Brian Urlacher also weighed in, saying he didn't understand why people were attacking the messenger instead of addressing the actual message. That line quickly spread across sports media and sparked even more debate. Kendrick Perkins took a slightly more measured approach on ESPN. He said he understood why some WNBA players might feel like they were being mocked, but he also argued that simply dismissing the underlying question wasn't going to make it disappear. According to Perkins, the league needed to actually address the issue with a clear answer rather than another vague statement about respect and inclusion. And by this point, the pressure on the WNBA to explain its position was getting harder and harder to ignore.
As I said last week, I come from a space of inclusion, and the narrative that I think that is problematic is to suggest that, number one, that transgender athletes are the biggest problem in women's sports. And I think this is what's bothersome, is that there's a faction of people in our country that are making this a massive issue. We have some issues. Number one, we need to protect trans kids. Every kid, to me, it's a human rights issue. Every kid has a right to sports, regardless of gender diverse, transgender. Every kid has the right to access. Now, what gets nuanced is, when you're beyond puberty, when you're an Olympic sport, when you're, scholarship system, that sort of thing. That's where I say that common sense people get together and you find common ground to find a way to be inclusive. The answer.
You are Cheryl Reeve, the head coach of the Minnesota Lynx. That is an irresponsible thing to do. You are a coach for a female basketball team. Do you not think that the females are being screwed over if they have to compete against a individual born as a male? What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You trying to tell me that a college player for the men's at a college program anywhere in the country, or an NBA player should transition to being a woman and be allowed to compete in the WNBA? Or on a collegiate level to a women's college program? Whether it's UConn, South Carolina, Iowa, Tennessee, or wherever else you want to come up with. What the hell are you talking about?
To understand why this whole situation hit as hard as it did, you have to go back a few weeks before Kanter's video ever appeared. The controversy really started when Fever guard Sophie Cunningham gave a straightforward answer in an interview. She said she wanted to protect young girls in sports and didn't believe biological males should compete against women. That one comment quickly set off a much bigger debate across the league. Players and coaches started taking sides, both on live television and across social media, and the discussion became impossible to ignore. Minnesota Lynx head coach Cheryl Reeve became one of the most outspoken voices on the other side of the debate. She publicly supported trans inclusion in the league and even wore a shirt that read, "Trans kids belong courtside," during a nationally televised game against Cunningham's team. And that's the backdrop you need to understand why Kanter and White's videos caused such an explosive reaction just a few weeks later.
You see how much of a mess this is becoming, right? Everybody want to act like, oh my goodness, we don't want to hate on trans. We don't want to hate on trans folks. That's not what that's about. Anybody who's hating on them should be ashamed of themselves. The WNBA, the NBA, and everybody else in between is absolutely right where they talk about not violating people's civil rights and liberties, not being hateful, not engaging in hate in any way, shape, form, or fashion, whether verbally, physically, or otherwise. We all know that. But what Enes Kanter is pointing to is about competition. So for somebody to transition from male to female
lifestyles and opinions, we embrace justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Those are the values that unite this union and allow it to protect women's sports while creating transformational change. Transformational change? Hate, abuse, and demonization of any person or group of people, including transgender people, only fuel fear, division, and harm. We will continue to have hard conversations, but we will not be used as political pawns. Support the players, support the fans. At games, notify security if you witness hateful, violent, or abusive behavior. Only report abusive posts and drown out the bots and bad actors. At home, tell your elected officials to strengthen
discourse around trans athletes and where they can compete in. I would welcome a trans athlete on my team or against my team anytime. I don't think it's a problem in the world. It's just another way to kind of...
Reeve didn't back away from her position once the cameras were on her. She told reporters that she comes from a place of inclusion and argued that the idea of transgender athletes being the biggest problem in women's sports was the wrong narrative. She also said that trans kids need to be protected and that, in her view, the issue was ultimately about human rights and every child having the opportunity to participate in sports. Those comments, made just one day before Cunningham's team came to town, became a big part of the argument from people like Kanter and White. They insist they weren't simply picking a fight with a women's league to get attention. Their argument is basically this: if self-identification is truly the standard being used, then that standard has to apply consistently to everyone, not just to the people the league is comfortable accepting. In their view, they're simply taking the logic that's already been presented and following it all the way to its natural conclusion.
Enes Kanter is not trans. Enes Kanter is an asshole who is using a major story, a culture war story, in order to cling to relevance. He is doing the work of right-wing nutjobs who are rallying around this non-issue in order to prop himself up, to make himself relevant. And in essence also undermining the very integrity of all conversations around trans athletes.
It is so remarkable and disgusting to me that we are still doing this in 2026. I don't know that it even needs to be said, but there's only been one openly trans player in WNBA history, and they were assigned female at birth. Much like how Trump threatened to cut funding from the NCAA if they did not enact a complete ban on trans women competing, when the NCAA president said that there were fewer than 10 trans athletes in all of the NCAA that he was aware of. That's out of more than 500,000 athletes in total. Like, it is just such a non-issue. These things don't even come up if they are not being used to attack trans people. It's like maybe the most perfect example of the right-wing delusion and excuse finding just to attack the vulnerable. It is incredible how much energy the right funnels into simply attacking trans people and their right to exist as themselves in public, in private, in every conceivable way, all the time. It is a pillar of the mission of an administration that is completely failing the country and the world.